Hello everyone, welcome to History Forge. My name is Taylor Hamlin. I'm going to be reviewing corroboration today. Going to do another primary source analysis focusing on corroboration and mostly focusing also on skill number 2.3, using the source to question, disprove, or confirm a historical idea, belief, or fact. So if we look at our little sheet right here, scrolling up to corroboration, we are on this one. So we get it highlighted. There we go. So we're on that one right there. And we've already done corroboration twice. If I look at our social studies guide, we've already done it twice up here. Now we're going to be working on this one. We've already seen a video too about it, but we're going to do one more focusing on just that skill. So right here, go ahead and copy this stuff down. If you're my students, you're going to copy all that stuff down in the notes. Corroboration, skill number 2.3, blah, blah, blah. And we're going to focus on the thing that says historical belief. This is something that you're going to want to need. And then copy this stuff down in the box. So when we do these, we're looking at a couple primary sources. Corroboration means we're using at least two sources because we're going to try to play them off each other to gain a better understanding. Looking at this skill, we need to have a fact. Now, if you were advanced students, if I was, this was a college course, or if you were a historian, I would expect you to just create the fact by yourself, kind of like what I just did. I looked at the two sources already, and I created this historical belief based off what I saw. And I'm going to kind of show you how I did that. But for you guys, you would need to be kind of expected to do that by yourselves. But since you're beginning, we're just learning how to test a fact that already exists against two sources. So we have this fact right here. It says historical belief. Thomas Nast was an artist who drew political cartoons that showed racial conflict in America. Nast himself seemed to believe in racial equality, but he was still a person of his time and held beliefs that modern-day society would consider racist. So I just created a quick fact based off my very brief analysis of two political cartoons that a person named Thomas Nast created. And I'm going to go ahead and show you what those are right now. Again, make sure you copy these things down in the box. If you need to pause my video to do that, go ahead and do that right now. So moving on to our two sources, we'll look at them. This is the first one. It's called Black vs. Irish, Thomas Nast. It's a source, a cartoon drawn by Thomas Nast for the cover of Harper's Weekly, December 7th, 1876. You can kind of see it's a cover of a magazine, so we know it's popular. It's going to be a lot of places. So we can draw that. Let's just start making observations. We're just making observations right now. We could say, since it's a magazine, Nast clearly is not afraid to show his opinion about race. But because it's a magazine, Nast may not be completely honest about his opinion because he would fear what the public thought. Kind of think about it, if you're out in public making speeches, you're going to be very different than when you're just talking to your best friend or even writing in a diary. You might be less honest because we all know that, we know what's acceptable and what's not acceptable. No one's going to go out there and call themselves a racist. Even people who are very racist aren't going to go up and make a speech about I'm super racist. No, it's one of those things that you're called because of your actions, and so we gotta be really careful about this. So Thomas Nast might be showing his opinion, might not be very afraid of it, but at the same time, he's probably not being 100% honest because he would be afraid of what's going to happen. These are all possibilities. So again, we got a picture here. Let's go ahead and look at the other one before we move on. This is the next one. It's called the Chinese question, Nast, so you should have copied that down. Same guy, and looking at it, it says source. The cartoon was drawn by Thomas Nast for Harper's Weekly. Same thing, so we can go ahead and just copy down this stuff right here. Moving on right there. So it says the cartoon was drawn by Thomas Nast for Harper's Weekly, a northern magazine. In this cartoon, we see Columbia, the feminine symbol of the United States, protecting a Chinese man against a gang of Irish and German thugs. At the bottom, it says, hands off, gentlemen. America means fair play for all men. So we look at it, this is something, it's going to be a very different picture. That's why I picked it, because both pictures are very different as far as their racial information or what they're trying to show. So now we still have two people, kind of like this one, but we also have all these people in the background. So we're going to talk about both. So, both opinions work because both are for the Harper's Weekly, so we have to be really careful. I just realized I wrote the acronym for RACE, our writing strategy, not just race. So I'll fix that. All right, so we're at 5 minutes. And I'm probably going to be talking for 15 more minutes, okay? So, moving on to this. Looking, oh, no, went too far. All right, so now looking at our picture here, let's zoom in actually so we can make more observations of it. Here we go. All right, so it says Harper's Weekly, Journal of Civilization. We already know it's a magazine. Up here it says South and North, so we could say that seems to be about the Civil War conflict. So, looking at this, we have two men. One is black, one is white. They even say black and white right here, so we could say that too. Two men who are racially black and white. Looking at both, both have very interesting clothing on. Not only that, both don't look human. I'm going to say that. So, both men do not look human. Okay. They look more ape-like, I would say, especially the Irishman. And, you know, both seem to be very racially discrimination, so I'll say racial discrimination next to both of them. And, you know, it looks like one of those, like, what do you call them? A scale. It's like a scale. And the scale is even. So here it says the South and the North. So the white is on the north and the black's on the south. So I would assume this is a slave. So I'm going to go into here and say slave, and then I'm going to go into white and say... here's the deal. I know it's Irish because it says so. Like, where'd it go? It says black versus Irish right here. So we can actually... We know the white man is an Irishman, specifically. So both men do not look human. They look more like ape-like. Racial discrimination is definitely being affected here. And they are... The men are sitting on a scale. And... the scale is even. So what does that mean? Like, so we can even like put it. What does that mean? So maybe Thomas Nast is possibly saying that both men are both Irish, or say black slaves and Irish immigrants are equal, but because he draws them in, we'll say, grotesque ways, and grotesque kind of means like not human, like kind of twisted and warped. It's a negative thing. So because he draws them in grotesque ways, Thomas Nast thinks both groups are equally bad. How about that? So I guess, do you guys see my assessment? Does that make sense to you? Like, you know, looking at it like, you know, we have this picture, both men don't look good, you know, both men look very ape-like, they look very racial discrimination. It's clearly a conflict between the South and the North. And remember, this is, you know, right before the Civil War. This is 1876, never mind, this is after the Civil War. So this would be like after all the black slaves are free, and the Irish would have been here for like 25 years at least, and more were coming each year. So I mean, maybe he's trying to say that this is the South and the North's problem. Both are a racial problem, and these two groups are inferior. I think he thinks they're inferior because of the way he drew them. And so to answer my question, remember, we're trying to compare this to historical belief. Thomas Nast was an artist who drew political cartoons that showed racial conflict in America. So that still makes sense. Nast himself seemed to believe in racial equality. Now, that's the part, like, using one source that I would disagree with. If you only showed me this one source, I would say, no, he doesn't. He's clearly a racist. Like, he believes that these people are comparable to each other, but he thinks that there's something else that's better than them. Look at the way he draws them. He draws them as to be monstrous things. But then he says, but he was still a person of his time and held beliefs that modern-day society would consider racist. This part makes sense to the first one, but I still haven't really explained this one yet. So we need to do that. So we looked at this. So we're going to go ahead and move on. Let's go ahead and find my other picture. Wherever it went. Where'd you go? Here we go. So again, we're looking at a new one. It's going to be about Chinese immigrants now. So another racial group. Thomas Nast drew another political cartoon. I don't know if it's got a date on it. 2001's not the date. It's kind of hard to see. I don't think I can see it from here. So it doesn't seem to say anything. It could be around 1882 because that's when the Chinese Exclusion Act was made. But I'm not 100% sure the date. But anyway, it would have been around the same time. Thomas Nast painted or drew for quite a few decades, so it would have been around the same time. Let's go ahead and go deeper into it. So we're going to zoom in just a little bit more. So we have two main people. We have a Chinaman and we have this woman. This woman's not a real person. She's not meant to represent a real person. She is she represents America. She's got a name. It says it up here. Where'd it go? Columbia. So we call this woman Columbia. Kind of think of her as the Statue of Liberty. She's supposed to represent America. So, in modern day, we don't really use Columbia as much. When you think about American symbols, you would mostly focus on the American flag, the Stars and Stripes, maybe even the Statue of Liberty. But Columbia was a really good way. Oh yeah, Uncle Sam would be another good one too. But back then, Columbia was the main focus. She's based off a Greek god or a Greek goddess and a Roman goddess. And it's kind of pretty, if you study American history, you're kind of used to that by now. So we got two people here. We'll say that. So it's going to go down. We'll say two people are the focus. We'll call it a Chinaman. That's what they referred it to as. So a Chinaman and Columbia. Again, Columbia does not represent any real human being. It's just America, basically. So she kind of seems to be very, she looks angry, but she's not looking at the Chinaman. She's looking at the crowd. And then you see the crowd back here. They're holding knives. They don't look too monstrous. They look like regular people for the most part. They look like they're angry, but they don't except for this guy. Looks like his mustache kind of makes him look crazy. They have, beards and mustaches, but for the most part, they're pretty normal looking. So everyone here looks fairly normal. This guy clearly looks Asian. You have to remember during this time period, they definitely drew people to represent certain physical characteristics. So even though you could argue that Thomas Nast is being very racist right here, I would disagree. I think he's not really drawing him in a way that looks monstrous. He looks, for the most part, like a regular human being. And you have Columbia here, who is gingerly touching him on the top of the head. So we're going to write all that stuff down. Two people are focused, a Chinaman and Columbia. Columbia is guarding the Chinaman against a crowd of angry, we'll say whites, so they look like angry whites, who are holding knives. So that's it. And then we'll say the Chinaman looks scared and sad. He is kneeling, and he is kneeling behind Columbia. So again, he kind of looks scared, and then there's even some other things that they actually use these as quotes. Where is it at? It says, hands off. So this would be right here, this quote. It says, hands off, gentlemen. America means fair play for all men. So here you have this representative of America guarding this Chinaman against these people. And so this is a more positive outlook for race. And Thomas Nast is saying no, this America should be equal for everybody, no matter what your race. And so here we have Columbia guarding against this white mob. I just noticed this too. Look at this. There's actually nooses on this tree. I guarantee it's a noose. And there's some signs back here. I'm sure they say something, but we can't really tell on the video or in this thing right here. I think that says colored. So that could be a racial stigma against black people. Yeah, again, we have a lot of different things back here we can't really read. We can read this stuff, though. The Chinese question, we got words like barbarian, the lowest and vilest, barbarian again. Idolater, I'm not really sure what that means. Heathen, so a lot of negative words. This is probably all the stuff that people called Chinamen back then. And so they're trying to show, this Chinaman who is sad, scared for his life, being protected by Columbia, or at least Thomas Nast thinks Columbia should protect him. So overall, I'm going to say that Thomas Nast believes that Chinamen should receive American opportunities. And so, I'm kind of going to stop right there. Did I misspell kneeling? Oops. So Thomas, too. So, looking at everything all together, all these are the quotes and information that you'd have to do to support this fact. So remember, this is what we would try to do. We try to compare us now. And so, we'll say Nast himself seemed to believe in racial equality. So, I say seem because it's still kind of ambiguous, but this picture makes it seem like it. I could probably go a step further and say Thomas Nast believed in equality for Asians. I could even write that right here. So we could even say especially for Asian immigrants. But he was still a person of his time and held beliefs that modern day society would consider racist. especially towards blacks, because they weren't slaves anymore, so we'll say blacks and what was the other one? Forgot. Irish. There we go. Blacks and Irish. So those are the two main groups he focused on. And, we can ask why too. Focusing on that in the 1860s and 70s. It's complicated, especially considering how many people are here. But to maybe put it more simply, the Chinese were only over in the West Coast. They really didn't bother anybody in the East Coast. Like, there were a few people that traveled back and forth, but for the most part, if you were a Chinese immigrant, you stayed on the West Coast, especially in California, in the gold fields. You really didn't come to the East, and so not many people actually ever saw somebody from China or the Asian countries for a long time. Whereas compared to the South, like the South had millions of black slaves who were then free black African Americans, so they would be considered more of a problem. And the Irish were coming over in the millions, every year a million Irish people were coming. Actually, that might not be true. Every 10 years, I would say, probably millions. But regardless, a lot of Irish people were coming over, and so again, they were causing more problems. Kind of like what Thomas Nast said. It seems like he considers the South, or the black slave or the ex-slave, the problem in the South, and the Irish in the North. So, pause this, take these notes down. But this is exactly how you do corroboration, and that's pretty much it. So, if you have questions, let me know. If you're a teacher, if you're my students, go ahead and close this. If you're a teacher that watches these, thanks for watching. Feel free to check out the video description, and we have social media stuff in the back, or in the video description too. If you have any questions, feel free to message me on YouTube or any other of my social media. That's pretty much it for us. You guys go ahead and take care. Bye.